Hello everyone. I want to talk to you about a video the New York Times released called Inside China's Predatory Healthcare System. In it, the New York Times makes several claims about the state of healthcare in China. The video is edited to elicit maximum fear, worry, and anxiety. There's also an accompanying article which has much more information. My name is Nathan Rich. I'm an American living in China. As such, I have a unique perspective on stories like these because even though my life is in China now, I still remember what it's like to live in America and not know much about the real China other than what the media outlets say. I've been to over a dozen hospitals in China. I've had dental work, LASIK, and even surgeries in both countries. I've been insured and uninsured. I've waited in lines, paid fees, talked to doctors and nurses, and have spent many nights by hospital beds here. I've seen real problems in China's healthcare system and in America's. But this video was actually a shock to me. When I saw inside China's predatory healthcare system for the first time, a wave of emotions washed over me. First and foremost, I was depressed and sad for the woman dying from cancer. But even the first time I saw the video, I could tell that something wasn't quite right. Before I go any further, I want to let you know that I was an only child of a single parent, my mother, and she passed away from cancer in 2010, so this issue is very important to me. Cancer is a heartbreaking, life-shattering disease that needs a cure. But to find a cure, we need to be honest about the situation from all angles. So let's talk about the lady who died from cancer in this film. In 2011, a 68-year-old former school teacher was diagnosed with serious lung cancer. At the time, her son was making what the New York Times called decent money at a pharmaceutical company. Over the next 3 years, she got surgery, took traditional Chinese medicines, and underwent biotherapy. The doctors recommended chemotherapy, but she turned it down because she felt she was too old. They also recommended radiation therapy, which she also turned down. So, her doctor prescribed her Iressa, a lung cancer drug. She bought and took Iressa for 9 months, after which the drug was no longer effective. Around 2015, after all these treatments hadn't quashed the cancer, her son quit his decent-paying job and moved in with her and her husband to help in any way he could. For 2 years, her son made her traditional Chinese medicines and various cancer drugs from recipes he found on the internet. He was determined to help his mother live as long as she could. My mother died in America only 2 weeks after her cancer diagnosis, so I know what it's like to not have enough time. In 2017, the New York Times interviewed the family and began working on their story. Surgery, traditional Chinese medicine, biotherapy, Iressa, and the various drugs her son made weren't able to beat the cancer. Though she did live for 6 long years after being diagnosed, sadly she passed away at 75 years old. That's her story, one of struggle and perseverance. She beat the odds and lived longer than most, but ultimately it was just her time to leave us. But now, let's take a look at how the New York Times chose to honor her memory in Inside China's Predatory Healthcare System. First, it's an introduction of her son. Take a look.
June earns $300 a month.
We see her son now, and all they tell us about him so far is he's making drugs and he only makes $300 a month, which is minimum wage where he lives. So he quit his decent paying job to take a minimum wage paying job and spend time with his mother. That's his choice. But notice that they left that part out. The tone is already set. Let's find out what he's doing.
The medicine needed to treat his sick mother cost $2,000. He's making WZ4002. It hasn't been approved by Chinese or American regulators.
The drug isn't approved in America or China, so either he can source it himself or he can't get it, exactly like in America. Can a man making minimum wage in America afford to treat stage 3 lung cancer? I mean, just look at these news articles about the medical costs in America. This is the #1 reason Americans file for bankruptcy. It's from medical bills. Many cancer patients must face bankruptcy or die. Or how about this one? 42% of new cancer patients lose their entire life savings. By the way, in this article, it says the average amount lost is $92,000. These people have normal jobs and are facing bankruptcy and death. How do you think that would work out for someone on minimum wage in America? So as hard as it is to confront, people not being able to afford cancer drugs is not a China-specific issue.
现在是用了7种了。
Remember how I said when I first watched this video I could just tell something was wrong? This is a clip of him saying, until now we have used these 7 drugs. But look at how the New York Times has translated it. We have made these 7 drugs. A slight but important difference. He's not saying that he made all those drugs. He's saying that she has taken those drugs. We know, for example, that they didn't make the Aressa that she took, so why are they altering what he said to suggest that he made all of them? Well, to make you think that they never bought any. So now, with only this information about her son, the video moves on to the narration-based section. The New York Times makes several large claims, and then they rely on editing, intense music, sound effects, misinformation, and lies to make their case. But don't take my word for it. Let's investigate this together.
It's a symptom of a healthcare system in crisis.
So far, the only thing we've seen is a man trying desperately to save his mother during the last months of her life after a long and horrible battle with cancer. She's received many treatments, and now as a last-ditch effort, he's trying anything he can. He's making medicine that isn't approved in China or America. So if he were in America, what would be different? To me, this sounds like a cancer crisis in the world, not a Chinese crisis.
The introduction of capitalism and the retreat of the state meant that healthcare was no longer free. Hospitals became profit-driven.
Weirdly, they're suggesting that hospitals in China are all profit-driven, and somehow that's the reason for this yet-to-be-revealed crisis. In this video, only one hospital is mentioned, and that hospital, like virtually all major hospitals in China, is public. The government sets the prices, and the aim of the medical staff in those hospitals is the same as anywhere else, to treat patients. Private hospitals in China aren't the same as they are in America. In fact, all the private hospitals combined make less than 10% the revenue that public hospitals do. The vast majority of private hospitals in China have less than 100 beds and only a 40% occupancy rate, while the largest public hospitals can treat well over 20,000 people in one single day. Are you getting the picture? People in China go to public hospitals because here in a socialist country, they are the best. So how is this caused by for-profit hospitals again? And China's already committed to moving hospitals to be completely non-profit by next year. What is America doing about the profit its medical companies are driven by? And also, does it seem a little weird to anybody else to hear an American newspaper complaining about capitalism in another country?
A culture of mistrust and inequality now plague the system.
By this time in the video, I was starting to realize the people who made it didn't really understand China very well. Chinese people trust hospitals and their doctors much more than Americans do. This is something you would be able to observe within a month of living here. It's culturally different than America. Right now, we have a friend who's coming back from New Zealand to China to do some very minor procedures. Why? Because she trusts the doctors here. You should also notice that in this video, not one person says anything about not trusting hospitals or doctors except for the New York Times. They say there's a culture of mistrust, and they show you absolutely no evidence of it at all.
About 100 people have gathered in a line in downtown Shanghai. It's the entrance to the Shanghai Cancer Center.
Unlike in America, in China, prices for the best hospitals are similar to ordinary hospitals. And when Chinese people get sick, they want to go to the best hospitals available. This is why there are lines at the best hospitals. America's solution to this is charge so much more money at these hospitals that only the rich can afford them. Why would that be better? So if you've got one of the top cancer hospitals in the country priced based on cost rather than on profits, and you've got a culture where people want to see the best doctors possible, you're going to have a very busy hospital. That's a good thing. People are getting treatment at one of the top cancer hospitals. They can afford it. They are there. Imagine how much better off America would be if enough people could afford the best cancer hospitals for there to be lines. I mean, really think about that. If you thought the earlier convenient mistranslation was an accident, you're going to be disappointed. Nearly everything a Chinese person says in this video is mistranslated, and every one of those mistranslations just happens to support the New York Times narrative. I wonder, what are the statistical odds that every single translation just happens to support their case accidentally? So this guy's only said two things and they altered both of them. First, he said they've spent $43,000 on his wife's cancer treatment. He makes no indication whatsoever that any of this money was spent at this particular hospital or over any amount of time. Yet, when we see the New York Times translation, it is clearly saying that he has spent the money here. The idea, obviously, is to make it seem like this is a very expensive hospital. It isn't. Let's compare what these people are paying for a top cancer hospital in China to the prices at the top cancer hospital in America. The people in this big, scary line are paying about $5 or $7 for a consultation with a specialist or an expert, if they're uninsured. If they have insurance, like 95% of Chinese people do, then they're paying nothing. I literally just searched for top cancer hospital in America. Here's the first one. It's called the MD Anderson Cancer Center. How much do you think it costs for the same consultation with one doctor once? Did you guess $40,000? Because if you did, you're right. It costs $40,000 to talk to one doctor one time if you have no insurance. If you do have insurance, it costs you only $4,000. So let's see what else this guy says. It's the second sentence's mistranslation that takes the cake. Didn't know there was a second sentence? That's because they showed him saying it and didn't bother to translate it for you. They didn't think his second sentence needed to be understood. What was that sentence? Let's take a listen. He said, "My wife got a cold." He seems to be indicating that he's standing in line to get a number for his wife to come to the hospital because she has a common cold. Now, she does have cancer, but Chinese people go to the hospital for a cold, stubbed toes, and anything else you can think of. The real question here is, why wouldn't the New York Times want you to understand him say he was bringing his wife to the hospital because she had a cold?
Your chance of seeing a doctor here is directly related to how big your wallet is.
The narration continues with this ridiculously over-the-top nonsense. They are implying quite directly that these people are waiting outside because they don't have any money, and if only they had more money, they could be seen without the wait. Take a moment to picture yourself going to a top cancer hospital in America. Outside, you find a line of people waiting to go in. Do you think to yourself, my God, if only these people had money, they wouldn't be in line? Of course not. So why does it seem so easy to think that here? Well, I'll tell you why. It's the nature of misinformation. Because the New York Times has spent so much of this video harping on about lines outside a top cancer hospital, we compiled a list of ways these people can see a doctor at that hospital. Are you ready for this? You can wait in line if you want to. You can use the hospital's official WeChat account to book an appointment at no additional cost. If you don't know what WeChat is, I wrote an article about it for medium.com, but basically it's a chat application and more. Or you can use this website and app to book an appointment at no additional cost. Or you can use this website and app to book an appointment, again, at no additional cost. In fact, they have additional features. On top of just booking an appointment, sometimes you can get free consultations. They have video conference options where you can sit with your doctor in your province and do a 3-way conference call with one of the top specialists, which costs $120. They have a 24-hour telephone service for one-to-one consultations with one of the specialists, which is $15 for 10 minutes. Or you can even pay $30 to have a 2-day unlimited chat conversations with a specialist, including sending them images and having them consult with you. We found at least 5 other websites and apps that allow you to book appointments with this hospital at no additional cost. If you have an appointment, by the way, you don't have to wait in this big scary line that they keep showing us again and again and again. You can just walk in when they open and give them your number. If you want an appointment with one of the top experts, you can just call the hospital and set up an appointment, again at no additional cost. Hell, you can even call China Unicom, the ISP, similar to Time Warner Cable, and set up an appointment at this hospital with them. You might be thinking, well, these people are old, maybe they don't have internet access or know all the numbers to all these places or whatever. If they're not able to see a doctor that day, all they have to do is walk over to an appointment kiosk inside and get a number for the next day. Then they don't have to wait in this line anymore. In fact, they don't even need to wait in the line the first time. All they have to do is walk into the hospital at any time, go to an appointment kiosk and get a number for the next day. Then they don't need to wait in this big, scary crisis line at all.
And in rural areas, it's worse.
So this lady has proved the point I made before. People seek out the best hospital they can when they have serious illnesses, wouldn't you? This video is making it seem like these people were forced to walk like refugees across thousands of kilometers because there aren't enough hospitals. But that's just not the case. In fact, there are more hospitals per person in China than there are in America. In America, there's one hospital for every 52,000 people. Pretty good, right? Well, in China, there's one hospital for every 44,000 people. That's almost a 20% difference. So why are they suggesting that there aren't enough hospitals? Do they think that the hospitals are too small? Is that it? Wrong again. The two largest hospitals in America have about 2,500 beds. In China, the two largest hospitals both have over 10,000 beds. Let me put it to you another way. The largest hospital in America wouldn't even be on the top 100 largest hospitals in China. Are you getting the picture now? So what are they even talking about? They're making it seem like these people have no options for hospitals when in fact they have more options than Americans do. This video is getting really frustrating. Unfortunately, the lies and misleading information has only just begun.
If you get cancer and live in an area without an oncologist, you could be in trouble.
In what country are you not in trouble if you get cancer in an area without an oncologist? You go to a hospital that has one, just like any other country in the world. This video is a bunch of people from different provinces going to this province, which isn't where their hukou are, to see doctors because they chose to go to the best hospital. Is anyone else seeing this? For this next part, I want to take the time to explain to you how seeing a doctor works in China because the New York Times didn't want you to know, and it's actually relevant. In China, people generally seek out one of two types of doctors, specialists and experts. Specialist has the same meaning as it does in the West, a doctor who specializes in a certain area, and experts are those specialists who have outstanding credentials beyond their peers. Without insurance, to see a specialist at this hospital costs $5, and to see an expert, it costs $7. If you have an emergency or you have special needs, you can pay $43 to see an expert in another line, which is sometimes shorter. But no matter who you want to see, you never have to wait outside if you make an appointment. And if you don't make an appointment, rich or not, you have to wait in line.
老百姓越是不公平，有钱的人呢，特许门诊啊、专家门诊啊，里边自己就去好看了。我们老百姓没权没势，只好自己乖乖的在后面排队，早上很早就起来了。
So now we're listening to this lady complain about how the wealthy people get to cut in line. What they're intentionally not telling you in this translation is what she's actually referring to. She's talking about the special needs line, which again costs $43 without insurance to see an expert, rather than the $7 it normally takes. Even if she was wealthy enough to afford an additional $34, she would still wait in line because she didn't make an appointment, just a smaller line. Does it bother anyone else that the New York Times didn't even try to understand what these people were talking about before they just wrote the scariest sounding interpretation possible and then moved on? But of course, this lady is just complaining about waiting in line because she doesn't want to pay for the additional service of seeing a top expert rather than just a specialist. Also, keep in mind that this entire time, none of these people have to wait in this line at all. They just want to see a specialist right now without an appointment. But the way that this video represents the line suggests that these people had no choice but to be in it. So far in this video, we could have chalked most of these things up to just a bunch of incompetence on the part of the New York Times. But here's where that starts to change. From this point on, nearly every single thing in the video is so skewed, biased, and intentionally misleading that I had to pick and choose which things to talk about for fear of the video being way too long. Let's take a look at how far the New York Times will go to make a story where one doesn't exist. Here we have a lady in line saying that there are supposed to be 2 thyroid experts today, but one canceled. The next thing she says is, so how many tickets can he get through? She's asking a question. How many people can this one specialist see today? She doesn't know. Maybe after the audio cuts off, she guesses at 7 or 8. But why is the New York Times depending on a random lady in line to guess about how many people a doctor sees in a day? Where are all the doctors and hospital staff in this video, by the way? Take a look at what the New York Times translation says about this lady in line wondering how many people a specialist sees in a day.
Those are not good odds, but even worse, they aren't unusual.
She is asking how many people one thyroid expert can see in a day. She has no idea because she doesn't work there. She's a patient. The New York Times is answering for her and us without telling anyone about it. So why is it that they want you to think a specialist could only see 7 or 8 people in a day? Well, because then it would really seem like these people outside won't get to see a doctor. That's why. Do you think that that hospital is overwhelmed by a couple hundred people who showed up early? Well, then you don't understand China at all. That hospital has over 2,000 medical staff working at it, over 500 of which are doctors. Why is there no mention of this at all? This line could be much larger and the hospital wouldn't even have much of an issue at all. They do about 3,500 outpatient and emergency visits, not per month like this video is trying to portray, per day.
There are nearly 7,000 people per general practitioner in China. To put this number in perspective, the World Health Organization's international standard is 1 doctor for every 1,500 to 2,000 people.
There is no universally agreed upon standard for the general practitioners to people ratio. There have been numerous studies and suggestions about the proper ratio, but for the sake of moving on, let's just assume that the boy narrating the video is right and it's 1 for every 1,500 to 2,000. Notice that this is the only infographic that they'll use that doesn't compare China to America. We'll get to that in a second. First, let's take a look at their source for China having less general practitioners than the international standard. It's the WHO OECD stats database. All right, let's take a look. Actually, it looks like the WHO OECD doesn't even track the ratio of general practitioners per person in China. So how are they sourcing this when the data isn't even there? They do, however, track the general practitioners per person in America. Let's take a look. Oh, it's 0.31. That's 1 in 3,226, well below the so-called international standard. Whoops. That explains why you didn't use America's data here. After all, what kind of crisis would it be if you said, both countries don't have enough, but we just want to talk about China? And speaking of the World Health Organization, their world map of countries with a critical shortage of health service providers clearly shows that China is not experiencing a critical shortage of doctors, nurses, or midwives. But of course, that information is missing from this video too. Also, notice how the narrator is talking about general practitioners, but the text says people per doctor. That's to make you think he's talking about all doctors when he's actually just talking about general practitioners. And if you understood Chinese culture, you'd already know that, like I said, by far most people specifically look for specialists rather than general practitioners. Honestly, I would have thought this number would have been much lower. I know people here who have literally never, ever been to a general practitioner even once in their entire lives. And it's not because there aren't enough, it's because currently, the culture is that of no one wants a generalist. They want specialists. And what the hell does the ratio of general practitioners to people have anything to do with this video anyway? These people aren't trying to see general practitioners, and general practitioners can't help them. These people are here to see specialists. And another thing, if you're so desperate to live where there are more doctors per person, here are some wonderful countries you can move to with more doctors per person than America. Cuba, Kuwait, Russia, Saudi Arabia, or how about North Korea?
General practitioners we talk to in China typically see 70 to 80 patients per day. Specialists said they see up to 200, each just for minutes at a time.
Did you catch that? They just 2 seconds ago told us that a specialist can only see 7 or 8 people per day, so that the line seemed very, very scary. And now that they have another attack angle, they're changing the story. Suddenly now, specialists see up to 200 people per day. Which is it, New York Times? It may come ironically as a news flash to the New York Times to find this out, but Chinese culture is not the same as American culture. And one of those ways that Chinese people are different than Americans is that they go to the hospital for what you would consider to be damn near everything. Stubbed toe, a little cut, a cold. Hell, sometimes I think they go to the doctor just to have someone to talk to. They go all the time. And because they actually respect the doctors in China, they don't question them as much, in my experience. If a doctor tells a patient to take some drugs, the patient says, "Thank you, doctor," and then moves on. They don't say, "But I read about this on WebMD," or "What about this other thing that someone else said might be better?" It's a different culture. You get it? And another thing hinted here is that there's some nefarious reason that Chinese people don't talk to their doctors as long. In China, there's not a buzzer that goes off after 5 minutes and then security guards come and take you out of the office. You talk to the doctor as long as you want, just like anywhere else. So you tell me, how long do you think it should take for an ear, nose, and throat specialist to prescribe Sudafed? Seems like it should be pretty quick to me. If you understood this culture at all, you would have never used this statistic as evidence of anything other than not everyone is how you think they should be. Not everyone is American.
While rich Chinese will pay for individual care, the rest of the population, those dependent on health insurance, end up paying roughly 30% of their healthcare costs. Americans pay about 10%.
Individual care in China is extremely rare. Even the super rich go to hospitals, which you would know if, again, you had ever even been here before, or you had listened to what the people were telling you instead of just changing everything they say to fit your narrative. This is a different culture. It's not a city in America. Do you even understand that? And why are you playing this sad music? You're making it seem like Chinese people pay more money for healthcare. They don't. Why are you using a percent instead of actual amounts versus income? Because Americans pay 8 times as much out of pocket as Chinese people do. That's why. And they don't make 8 times the money. So where are all the sad music videos about America? So now you're about to show a bunch of disturbing footage of people being very upset in hospitals. I'm not going to show this footage because it's exploitation of these people's grief. I'm just going to show you a still frame where you can clearly see what this lady's upset about.
Numbers like these have added up to a culture of conflict. Violence has become commonplace in hospitals across China.
Here we see a lady yelling out, "You are all murderers." Obviously, she had a tragedy. Someone in her family, a loved one, has passed away. She's overcome with emotion and grief and rage, and she's having a horrible experience. She's dealing with the worst grief in her life. And I just want everyone to notice that what you're trying to say is that she's mad about the bill. Look, violence in hospitals is rare in China, and it's a problem everywhere. I've been to hospitals in China many, many times, and I've never seen any violence, nothing even close to it. No one I've ever known has ever seen it anywhere, and I just keep wondering why you seem so determined to show there's some huge crisis here when clearly there's a big problem in America. I mean, just take a look. New AMA policy calls for research on violence against physicians. Violence against emergency room staff are seen as increasing. Assaults against ER physicians and staff rising. In America, nurses face workplace violence rates higher than in any other industry. Or how about this one that says hospital violence happens so often that healthcare workers consider it part of the job? Or how about this video that was on one of these articles? I just clicked it and watched.
We've been spat upon or grabbed, punched, kicked.
One of my trainers was killed in the parking lot of the hospital by a deranged patient.
Throughout the course of my career, I had a gentleman pull a knife on me so fast, I never saw it coming.
I have a friend from years ago who was actually targeted by a patient, followed home and killed in his own driveway.
You're showing us a video of a lady overcome with grief and despair and claiming it's somehow because she pays less money than Americans do. I just showed you a video I found in 2 seconds where American doctors are talking about their colleagues being tracked down and murdered in parking lots and at their homes. And yet for some reason, I wasn't able to find your video about the culture of conflict in America and how violence has become commonplace in hospitals across America. Why is that? The people you showed are upset because they lost a loved one. It's not because the bill's too high.
Violence in hospitals has become so common in China, there's a word for it. Yi Nao.
Yes, in Chinese you can say Yi Nao, which means hospital disturbance. But the point you're trying to make is so juvenile and stupid, I can't believe that I have to tell the New York Times that Having a word for something doesn't make it common. They said this in the video and they wrote it in an article. Somebody typed those words. It happens so often, they even have a word for it. Let me tell you another thing that happens so often that the Chinese have a name for it. 球星雷. That is so common that they even have a word for it. What does that mean? It means ball lightning. Happens all the time because they have a word for it. Also, did that video say 2012 on it? Let's talk about the most recent statistics in America compared to the previous year. According to the IAHSSF Crime and Incident Survey 2017, hospital rapes and murders are up over 11% from the previous year. Think that's just a fluke? All of the crime statistics they track are up. All of them. Assault, burglary, theft, vandalism, disorderly conduct, motor vehicle theft, rape, murder, it's all up. Some metrics are up by 40%. And during that same time, medical disputes and hospital-related crimes went down in China, not up. So now we're going back to the people who were in line.
They scan the board of available specialists, selecting one based on their best self-diagnosis.
Just like everywhere in the world, if you want to specify a doctor, you can. That's what the board is for, to specifically request a doctor. If you don't want to request a specific doctor, you don't have to. You can just walk in and see any old random doctor. Or you can go to a specific department. Or you can go to the counter and say, I don't know who to see, my leg hurts. It's a hospital. It's really not that hard to understand.
If they're lucky, the one they choose will have time to see them.
Just because you choose to see a particular doctor doesn't mean that they magically have time for you. I feel like I'm explaining things to a baby now. If they don't have time to see you, you can just go see another one or make an appointment at the kiosk. I mean, did you just send some interns wandering around in a hospital to film everything that confused them? Where is this crisis you're talking about?
For those who choose wrong, the cycle will begin again tomorrow.
If you chose a specialist and you didn't get to see him, you can just go see another doctor that same day. The only way you would need to re-queue is if you somehow didn't know about all the millions of other ways to go and book an appointment, totally ignored the appointment kiosk, and then when they told you the doctor didn't have enough time, you said, I'm not seeing any other doctors, that's the only one I will see, I'm coming back tomorrow to wait in line, and I'm not making an appointment no matter what you say. So far in this video, they've introduced the son while leaving out important information about him. They interviewed some people waiting around in line and lied several times about what they said. And they showed how little they understand China by parroting irrelevant statistics, and they try to say that a lady was screaming at people in a hospital because the bill was too high. But as hard as this is to imagine, it actually gets worse from here. So finally, the video will introduce the lady I brought up in the intro. She's speaking a regional dialect in this video, and so we reached out to a friend of mine who is from her actual city to help us translate this part. The person did not know anything about this project or article. He only had the audio, and we have confirmed the translation with multiple sources. To remind you, when they filmed this, she had already been fighting lung cancer for 6 years. She got surgery, took traditional Chinese medicines, got biotherapy, turned down chemotherapy and radiation therapy, and took Aresa before eventually giving up. Let's see what they show us. So here she is mentioning that she didn't want chemo or radiation therapy. After receiving so many treatments already, she didn't want to reduce her quality of life. She felt she was too old, and that's her right. So you notice it just shows her talking about how she got sent home with medicine, but it doesn't mention any of the other treatments that she had before this moment. It's just making it seem like she went to the doctors and said, I have cancer, what should I do? And they just said, go home lady, you'll be fine. Which is not at all what happened. She tried multiple treatments and turned down multiple treatments before this moment when she was prescribed, paid for, and took a lung cancer medicine. But why would the doctor tell her that she will be fine? Well, he wouldn't. He didn't. That's not what she's telling the New York Times at all, and yet that's what the New York Times is telling you. They say she said, "The physician in charge told me, ma'am, your cancer is not yet severe. You can take some medicine, go back home, and get some rest. You will be fine." But as you guessed, that's not at all what she said. What she said was, the doctor, the main doctor said, "Oh, Graham, your situation, you take some medicine back and try to make your body stronger." Okay, fine. No radiation, no chemo. The doctor is accepting her decision to not do chemo or radiation treatment and insisting that she at least take medicine and get rest. In what appears to be the first honest mistake of the video, the New York Times apparently used a non-local translator for this conversation because they have misunderstood or mistranslated the last words to be "you'll be fine." They may have thought her trailing off while saying 和化疗 was her saying 会好. But either way, we've confirmed this translation with multiple sources. Even if they made one honest mistake, it doesn't excuse all the obviously deliberate ones. And on top of that, they should have gotten a local translator. And if you go to a doctor in America and you find out that you have severe lung cancer, and you try surgery and you try traditional medicine and you get biotherapy, and the doctor says, "We should be doing chemo and radiation therapy," and you say, "No, I'm not doing those." And then he says, "Okay, well then you need to take this cancer medicine." What else are you expecting to happen? I don't understand what you're comparing this to. Is there some magic treatment I'm not aware of that this lady should have received before this point? I don't get it. You're just using this lady's horrible, tragic story to twist it around to make some weird propaganda film about China. It's disgusting. And believe it or not, that's not even the worst part yet.
做手指呢，费了劲呢，也好了起来耽误了别人了，就回来，我说，反正不看去了，该弄什么我操，那想的不这样，他就说，还能不看呀？实在重要。
In yet another intentionally mistranslated section, the idea here is to make it seem like nothing was tried with her because she didn't have any money, so they just let her die. So let's listen to what she's actually saying rather than what the New York Times wants you to think that she's saying. So they're saying that what she said is, "I wasted my time and money and delayed my treatment and my cancer got worse. I came back home and said, it's already happened this way, I give up. I'm resigned to my fate. But my younger son wouldn't let me give up." The key thing here that they're trying to drive home is that she listened to the doctor and delayed her treatment, and then it was too late for her. That's the message that they're sending to you. When actually the only delay that happened was when she declined chemo and radiation therapy, which was, again, her right to do. But actually, it doesn't seem like she even said that at all. Let's take a look at what she really said. "We spent energy and money, but it was a waste. I said, forget it. I'm not going back to see any more doctors. My son disagreed and said, no, you still have to see doctors. Here, eat some traditional Chinese medicine." So what she's saying is really sad. The lady is at the end of her line. It's been 6 years since she was diagnosed with severe lung cancer, and she survived a very long time with that cancer. And this is towards the end of that battle. But the thing is, she didn't say that the doctors told her to delay her treatment because she didn't delay treatment. She got lots of treatment, year after year after year, until eventually none of them worked anymore. And the cancer unfortunately won and took this nice lady away from the world. But why is the New York Times trying so hard to make it seem like her doctors denied her treatment when, again, she's the only person in this story who turned down any treatments? Can you see now why I was so upset when I saw this video? Can you imagine what it must be like to have these idiots from America come to your country and exploit the deaths of your people for their own propaganda films against you? What a disgusting piece. And just to top it off, even the very last thing her son says in this video is intentionally mistranslated. Let's take a look.
具体他这个病这个进程就是这样的。
No, he didn't say this is our way to treat cancer. They're trying to make it seem like he's saying, oh, this is just how we do it in China, which is not at all what he's saying. What he said was, this is how the disease is. This is the process. Basically, he's saying, yeah, this is just what cancer is. You throw everything at it, every type of treatment you possibly can. And in the end, it usually wins and you still die. That's what he's saying. And they're twisting that around into, oh, China doesn't know what to do about cancer, which is so messed up. It's like, why would you do that? And how is it that you think I wouldn't catch you? Another thing they conveniently left out of the video, the cancer rate for women in America is 15% higher than in China. The lung cancer rate for women is 19% higher in America than in China. And in case you're wondering, the cancer death rate in China is the same as Denmark, Poland, Netherlands, France, and the UK. Do those places have a huge crisis? Where's the New York Times articles about people dying from cancer in those places? With someone screaming because of the hospital bill, someone in line complaining that he was there too early. You know, there's plenty of incompetence on display from the New York Times here, like how they call the lady Ms. Yao, and then later talk about her son moving in with his parents. Or how they posted the video on the wrong article back in September, and then released the right article in November with another wrong video. As of today, the videos are still wrong. Or how about the fact that Sui Li Wei, the Singaporean lady living in Beijing who wrote the article, doesn't even know the city or province these people were in. She said the family lives in the province of Liaoning, but they actually live over 500 miles away in a different province, Hebei. But even with these amateur mistakes, I can't force myself to believe that this story was born solely from incompetence. The evidence for xenophobia is just too prevalent. With hundreds of anti-China tweets and reposts on both Sui's and video creator Jonah Kessel's Twitter accounts, it's no wonder that this article comes off so anti-Chinese. Jonah Kessel has been making anti-Chinese films inside of China for years. That's how they make their money. By exploiting the Chinese, by exploiting the dead and dying in China. Look, no country is perfect and no healthcare system is perfect. But this is just a propaganda video, plain and simple. And it's cast a huge shadow over everything the New York Times has done since. How can I trust them to report honestly when they have so clearly shown that they're willing to mistranslate, lie, obfuscate the truth, and omit relevant information? For those of you who want more information about me or my book, or if you want to see the sources for this video, unlike the New York Times, I've listed them all out as clear as day on my website, nathanrich.online. You know, the next time you run a piece about China, you need to do more than send out interns to exploit tragedies and interview people online and then just edit whatever you get to tell some fairy tale propaganda video. You better come correct next time because I'm watching you.